Today we have for you our beautiful, beautiful Kathryn Waldrom from our pod, who's done all our programs and is on our Quelt, the Quantum Excellence Leadership Training, and has discovered that her mission is around interviewing people that are as wise as Jesus. And then Kathryn will write her own book around that topic. So today I'm super excited to introduce you to Bridget Finklaire, who has written her first novel, The Red Dress, and I'm beyond excited. I can't wait to read it. I had a little sneak preview at the first 3 chapters, and I just can't wait to read the book. So so going to hand you over to these 2 beautiful ladies to share Bridget's wisdom and for Kathryn to interview Bridget. So I'll leave you to it.
Thank you, Deborah. Hi. So yes, as Deborah said, I'm Kathryn, and as part of my journey, as a child, I always wanted to be as wise as Jesus. So this is unravelled on my journey. I intend to write a book after interviewing inspirational people who have something to share with the world. And one of those on my continuing journey is Bridget Finklaire. She's an author of a best-selling book. When I say best-selling, that is in the future, but it's already done, as we know. So it's entitled The Red Dress. So to tell us a little bit more about it, but first to introduce yourself, here is Bridget. And Bridget, can you tell us a little bit about your background and maybe read an excerpt from your book?
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Kathryn, and thank you, Deborah. And it's absolutely my pleasure to be on here and speak to you all in your pod. My background is quite long because I'm getting a bit old now, but I don't know how far you want me to go back, but essentially I used to work in public relations many years ago. I gave that up to get married and have children. I've got 2 kids and they're grown up now. My daughter Lottie's 29, she lives in Mexico. My son is 27 and lives in Vietnam. They've all been trained in intuition. I, at that time, changed my work and became a sort of full-time mother, and I just started really seriously on a path of healing because I'd had some quite challenging things happen in my childhood family. So I decided to embark on this kind of path, both of a spiritual path and also a path of healing and going to therapy and counselling, and that led to me actually training in psychotherapy and hypnotherapy and healing and all kinds of modalities, and I ended up becoming a Harley Street therapist. But at the same time, there was always this spiritual path that was running in parallel, and eventually those 2 paths integrated together. In 2012, I met the wonderful Deborah. We were on a training together, and that intuitive training led me to leave my job in Harley Street. My kids were going off to university. Lottie went to drama school, Henry went to university, and I came to live in Cape Town, and I've been here ever since. And all kinds of magical, wonderful things have unfolded. I was guided intuitively to write a book, and I was told in no uncertain terms by my intuition that it had to be a fiction. It wasn't going to be a how-to book, which was quite horrifying, and I was quite shocked about that. So it's been 7 years in the writing, but here it is. Red Dress by Bridget Finklaire. It's published by John Hunt Publishing. It's going to be launched in the UK and USA at the end of this month, 30th of July in UK, 1st of August in USA. And at the moment, it's been well received by those who've had a sneak preview. And thank you for inviting me on. Kathryn, would you like me to read a little scene from here?
I was just going to say, yeah, if you could do that, it just leads in nicely. If you'd read a passage from it, please.
Okay, so I'm going to read you. So just to give you a little bit of background, obviously, it's about a woman called Katie, who's a career mum in her 40s, and she's completely stressed out and time-starved, and she's got all the markers of success, but she's empty inside and she's lost herself. And then she feels guilty because she's got all this stuff and she doesn't feel happy. She's got the handsome husband, she's got the kids, she lives in London, she's a Harley Street therapist. So there are some semi-autobiographical bits about this book, but it is fiction. So she's forgotten who she is and what makes her tick, and she embarks on a spiritual journey. It's a funny book, but it's also full of wisdom. There's sad bits, there's funny bits, and everything in it is actually authentic. So if there's something in there, like even the way she meditates is an authentic way of meditating, and you can copy that and use it. And it's kind of drawing on my 30 years as on a spiritual path, and sort of 25 odd years as a therapist. So it's drawing on those things. But I'm going to read you a scene where she goes to have her soul contract read, and she's not really sure about it, but it's what it says on the tin. She's having her soul contract read, and so she's going to North London to a lady called Dina, and this is the scene that I'm going to read for you today. And it actually starts off October the 9th, 2008, because there's a whole numerology thing that runs through this. There's a whole thing about numbers. Dina's North London flat was furnished with artefacts and wooden carvings from Asia and India, offset by stark white walls and floorboards. A joss stick sent a wisp of sweet-smelling smoke into the centre of the room. Dina's caramel skin shone with health. Her dark hair swept back into a perfect, thick, coiled plait, accentuating a classic oval face and almond-shaped brown eyes. Her fine ankles tinkled with the sound of tiny bells on a silver chain. Deep red nail polish, perfect in its execution, adorned the toes of her dainty feet, which danced lightly across the floor. The blood-like pools of crimson caught between the white of the floor and the brown of her feet. Katie had an urge to cry and stifled it. The scene reminded her of her past, pre-Richard, when she was single and living near Archway in a bohemian flat. She missed it. It seemed so far away and out of reach, so at odds with her sleek new existence. She'd adopted the role of wasp wife and lost who she was. Out of place and out of time, she'd mislaid herself. Creativity, individualism, and playfulness were missing. She'd been swallowed up by faded grey and classic lines and metropolitan suburbia. "Take a seat," said Dina, bringing a jug of water and 2 glasses from the small kitchen. Katie took a notebook and pen from her bag. From a carved Moroccan cabinet, Dina pulled an old tape recorder and a blank cassette. Katie stared in disbelief at the antiquated machine. Slipping the cassette into the player, Dina pressed 2 of the chunky buttons and it began to hum. Soul contract reading, Katie Stone, 9th of October, 2008. The session was recorded, but the cassette was never to be heard. There was nothing Katie owned on which to play it. "These are the Moses codes," said Dina, showing Katie a sheet of paper with strange symbols. "They're derived from your date of birth and your birth name. You also have what we call an overlay name. When you married Richard, you changed your name to Kathryn Allison Stone, and that brought in a whole new vibration and path." "What does that mean?" asked Katie. "That's what I'll be explaining over the next couple of hours. See this diagram? It's like a Star of David or 2 intersecting triangles. The upward pointing triangle is your physical life, and the downward is your spiritual life. The centre point is your ultimate soul purpose. Think of it as a destination. You've got to work through the other 6 points first." "Oh," said Katie, scribbling furiously in the notepad. "I'll show you the karmic debts, the obstacles, the challenges, the opportunities, and we'll also talk about the implications of your name change to Stone, as well as the relationship dynamics with Richard, Matilda, and Frederick." Katie became engrossed in the symbols, signs, and meanings which were based on numerology. the numbers in her date of birth and the numerical value in the letters in her name, with A being 1 and B was 2 and so on, all the way up to I, which was 9, and then J started back at 1. 9 is a very special number. There are only 2 letters of the alphabet which represent 9, I and R. Everyone wants 9s. That's why Danny Minogue added that extra I to her name. I don't think you realise how important it is. You've got 6 9s in total in your name, and your birthday adds up to 9. 9 is unique, mathematically speaking. Multiples of it, added together, always come to 9. What do you mean? Well, 2 9s are 18, add 1 and 8 of 18 together, and you get 9. But it carries on like that. Let's take a random number. 36, said Katie. Dina scribbled down some calculations. 36 times 9 is 324. Add together 3, 2 and 4 and you get 9. It's the last of the single digit figures. 10 has 2 digits, so 9 is the completion of things. It's a highly spiritual number and it happens to be your life path. You're here for high-level spiritual work, and it's probably your last incarnation. By the way, your chart shows you're very psychic. Katie was reeling with disbelief. Could this be true? Or did she say that sort of thing to everyone? She couldn't take it in. Wasn't it just pie in the sky? Put it down to experience, she told herself. We live and learn. You okay? Do you need a break? Dina halted recording with a clunk, resuming after a short while and taking a fresh sheet of symbols from her folder. When you married Richard, she said, you changed your surname and that brought in a whole new vibrational overlay. I can see how it must have catapulted you into motherhood and domesticity at such a rate that you barely had time to consider. Katie stopped writing and stared at Dina. It would have forced you to become family-oriented and shift your values, she continued. Katie opened her mouth to speak, but hesitated, letting Dina carry on. It also doubled your workload and stress. See, she said, pointing to a pair of squiggles. It's a karmic knot. Well, what does that mean? There must have been karma from a past life for you to work through, a life lesson, if you like. Well, what sort of lesson? I can't tell, but it has a doubling effect. You'll have ended up doing twice as much as you did before. And getting horribly busy? Asked Katie, watching carefully for a reaction. Yes, probably feel overstretched. That's exactly how I feel. Overwhelmed, she said, focusing fully on Dina now and wondering how she could possibly have known any of this. I look after everyone, Richard, the kids, the house, not to mention all my clients. I do my best, but the responsibility weighs me down. I can't break free of the mounting workload. You feel trapped, suffocated? She'd nailed it precisely. It feels like it's all caving in. Yes, I see that in the charts. You're so busy you don't know what you are anymore, or who you are. Katie edged forward, leading in towards Dina. Carry on. Let's get to the point of it all, your soul purpose, which is at the centre. I think you'll like it. See this? She was pointing at a symbol. It means you were born to talk. Katie tipped back her head, laughing. Everyone's been telling me that for years, even my old school report. It used to say Kathryn talks too much. I was always getting into trouble. £150 and a whole afternoon for something she already knew. Suddenly, she became aware of a lifelong struggle between the desire to talk and the need to keep herself in check and be quiet. A counsellor needed good listening skills, but she'd opted for approaches that involved speaking to her clients. Hypnotherapy, cognitive behaviour therapy, NLP. It's not just about talking, Katie, it's about speaking. Katie came from a boisterous family, most of them older than her and all very chatty. They would talk in unison, each hoping to be heard above the din of the others. Her mother spoke the loudest, slicing through it all like a Spanish galleon in full sail. Only her father was able to usurp her position. Katie's tactic was to gabble quickly in the hope of fitting in what she wanted to say between everybody else's chirping. She'd always felt that nobody was listening anyway. They were thinking about themselves and the importance of their own contribution. Speaking? Who was going to listen to her? Public speaking, said Dina, leaning forward and raising her voice slightly to get Katie's attention. You're going to be talking to big audiences, teaching them. Katie stared at Dina, her mouth slightly open, her eyebrows raised. What on earth would she be telling them? It's your sole purpose, speaking from a stage, leading by example, pioneering a new evolution in consciousness, said Dina, her voice rising with excitement, her words tumbling out. What, me? Katie became animated, warming to the idea, yet at the same time overwhelmed by it. A thrill running down her spine. The stressed mother, wife and therapist was happy to exchange roles and bask in the limelight for once. But the thought of standing on a stage in front of all those people petrified her. You'll be sharing your wisdom publicly. Remember, it's the potential we're looking at. You'll have to want it, claim it and work for it. It's a lifetime goal, but what a goal. Katie suddenly felt small. There must be some mistake. The vision both thrilled and terrified her at the same time. But I'm not sure. I mean, are you certain you've got it right? Dina laughed. Yes, I'm sure. You're likely to face a few challenges along the way, but that's what the symbols are telling me loud and clear, and they don't lie. Her face grew more serious. The only thing is, you're going to have to change your name. What? You definitely can't do it with your present name. Katie's bubble burst, her shoulders visibly slumping. But I can't do that. I used to be Diane, but I tweaked my name to shift the vibration. It was a game changer. It's all been unfolding beautifully since then. But I'd feel like a fraud. Have a think about it. Tree, he used to be called Simon. He's my mentor. He heads up the UK. Went out to California to study, changed his name, and his whole life turned around. I promise you, it's magic. Katie suppressed the urge to laugh and blurt out something sarcastic. She could hear her cynical self mocking in Richard's tones. What sort of person calls themselves Tree? It's not even a proper name. You can't be serious. But I don't want to change my name. There's no way I could be called Cloud or Carly or whatever. It would be ridiculous. I'm Katie or Kathryn, and even Kitty Cat drives me nuts. You could change your surname. Think about it. I'm sure you'll find a way, said Dina, sipping at her water. And it would be a pity not to fulfil your role, otherwise you'll have to come back again. For another reading? No, for another incarnation. So that's the end of the passage that I wanted to read for you.
Wow, that was amazing. What I got from that when I was reading it, your voice is so descriptive. You actually really convey the book. I mean, I've read that part that you just said out, but I really stepped into it then as you was reading it. It really got to me. Yeah, so if you're ever putting it out into audiobook, you should read it yourself. You've got an amazing way of projecting that. So let's carry on with the interview. What prompted you to write the book?
Okay, so just thank you, Kathryn. I just want to go back and say my mother was an actor and so is my daughter. And so I think some of it's rubbed off on me in the middle. But I've always thought if I got it as an audio, maybe I'd get my daughter to do it because she's actually a trained actor. But thank you anyway. It was great fun to read it. So what prompted me to write the book? Well, it was intuitive. And I know that you guys in the pod are all being trained in your intuition by the wonderful Deborah. And when you start to live your life from intuition, which Deborah and I have been doing for I don't know how long now, is it 10 years or something crazy? You start to get into that whole way of, it becomes a way of life where you live your life by your intuition. So it actually goes back a little bit before that. So when I was living in London as a very stressed out therapist, I had a very good friend who was very intuitive. Her name was Zoe, and she used to say to me, you know when you write your book, and I go, oh, Zoe, it's just Zoe. And when you write your book, no, you are going to write a book, you are going to write a book. And in the back of my mind, I think, well, what is this book going to be? I don't know when I'm going to write a book. I don't have time to write a book. And then I moved to Cape Town, and within weeks of moving to Cape Town, I was living in a place called Komaki, which is on the peninsula, Cape Peninsula. It's a beach place. It's a surfer's dude place. I was living in this beach house, and I had a Skype call, just a catch-up, friendly Skype call with William Whitecloud, and I'm sure you're all aware of who he is. And it wasn't a session. It wasn't anything to do with training. It was just friends catching up. And he said to me, I got that funny accent. You're going to write a book. You're going to write a book, and that's your path of least resistance. And I thought, oh God, here we go. So I was resisting it. And within about an hour of that Skype call, I had somebody knock on my door. Now, bear in mind, I'd lived in this place for 2 weeks. I'd just moved to Cape Town. I didn't know anybody. So somebody's knocking on my door, and I think, who's this? I look out the window to make sure it's not some nutter, or some beggar or something, and it's some guy. He looks fine. So I open the door, and he says, I live across the road from you, and since you're new, we thought we'd invite you to a braai. Now, a braai is like a barbecue in South Africa. So I said, oh, yeah, sure. And he goes, 7 o'clock tonight, it's my wife's birthday. So I pitch up at 7 o'clock with my bottle of wine, and I find out that the wife is an author, and everybody there is either a writer, an author, an editor, or a publisher, and there's a couple of people who actually teach creative writing courses at Cape Town University. And I'm thinking, okay, there's my sign. The universe is speaking to me. And then I resisted for about another 6 months, and eventually I was, tuning in and creating I know you call it Land of Dreams, your Land of Dreams. And I kept getting bridges to write this book, and I kept resisting. And eventually somebody said to me, no, look, all these other things you've got no control over. But your book, you have got control over, and you need to write the book. And actually, I get the feeling that if you started writing your book, everything else in that Land of Dreams will start to come to life. So it was a wet, windy, cold, freezing June day, because it's winter in June here. And I was living in this rented house that looked a bit like a hobbit house. And I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? So I tuned into the end results of what I wanted to create. And I knew I wanted it to be fun, it needed to be entertaining, it needed to be engaging, it needed to share pearls of wisdom. And funnily enough, interesting, I don't know whether I've ever told Deborah this, but I visualised my target audience as Deborah. And I thought, if Deborah likes this, there'll be loads of Deborahs in the world that also like it. So it was always going to be for women who were kind of on in an alternative world, maybe on a spiritual journey, maybe dipping their toes into a spiritual journey, or maybe already been on one for a while, and probably women actually from about 30 upwards. And a lot of people who've read the pre-publication copies or read the first 3 chapters really relate to Katie. So that I chose my end results, and then I went into a meditation and connected with my greatness in innocence, as we do, and I just sat in that space, and then I got this sort of voice in my head that just went, open your eyes and start typing. And I did, and I'd just been tuning in with another friend of ours called Kirsty, and so I just made the character Kirsty because I couldn't think of a name. And as I started writing it, it became obvious that it was sort of semi-autobiographical, but I didn't really want it to be an autobiography. So I wanted to make it fiction, and so I gave her a whole identity and fictionalized her and the other characters into the book. And I just started writing, but it was London. She was a stressed out therapist. And I then went for a walk after about 3 hours of writing. I thought, I can't call her Kirsty. And I just thought, no, she's going to be called Katie. Interesting, because you're Kathryn and you're interviewing me. And so she became Katie. And all the names just came intuitively. I wrote the whole thing. It took me about 2 years in total, because in the midst of all of that, I ended up meeting my husband and moving in with him, and all sorts of stuff happened. And then I had a year off because I went through menopause and I was sick, and we were building a house and we were getting married, and all sorts of things happened. And then I started again. And what happened then was I got the publisher, which was a huge piece of magic to get. It's actually really difficult to get a publisher. I got the publisher and they said, look, we love the story, we love what you've done, we love your writing, but it's not structured as a novel and you need to restructure. You need to basically go off and learn how to write a novel. So then I had to go off and learn about structure. And you know the importance of structure in magic, and it's a really important structure in anything. So there is an underlying structure to a book, and you have to learn that about plot points and tension and how the characters play against each other and deeper characterization and understanding those characters. And you'll notice when I read that Dina speaks in a completely different soft, gentle voice because that's what she's like, you know, as a character, but you have to really know who they are so they have their own voice. So that took me a while, and then another 2 years to completely rewrite it. That's, sorry, long rambling answer, but there you are.
I just noticed there when you were speaking, Deborah's just telling us that structure creates reality. So it's all, everything's linked, and so what you've just said is like sort of another lesson from the universe telling us how things go, and a certain personal one, a little dig from to myself there, who struggles with structure. Yeah, so in my opinion, your book is, from what I've read, well, firstly, I did identify, as you said, with that this could be me, especially with the name as well, being that, and having just been told that I need to change my name vibrationally. So I was like, this could be me. But then I started thinking that it's not. It's just elements of it that you identify with. So there's, I would imagine that there's going to be a lot of people who read this book will see something of themselves in it. Whether it is just like sort of intentionally to be like that, but that's how it seems to me. But I also see it as it's described as a bit of an eat, pray, love, with a dash of Bridget Jones in it. Myself, I actually see it even more than that in a Dan Brown sort of way, where this is actually going to open people up to areas of themselves, of spirituality that they might not even have heard of, but you've done it in such a way that it gets across, it sort of enters the subconscious without them knowing that, and it will capture their imaginations themselves. Was that your intent? And yeah, just a little bit more on that, what your intent was.
Yeah, that was also one of the end results, was because there's lots of fabulous books out there, spiritual books, loads and loads and loads of them, and they're brilliant. And people who are already dedicated to this path are quite happy to plough through challenging books, you know, or books like Power of Now, which are quite repetitive, but brilliant book, but quite repetitive, or Path of Least Resistance. I used to joke that the Path of Least Resistance was to leave it in my handbag, but actually it's a very powerful book, but you have to plough through it little bit by little bit. And you know what, every so often when I'm on holiday, I then get on holiday and I think, oh, well, I really need to read the Kybalion or whatever, you know, something ridiculously hard, and then I think, oh, well, I'm on holiday, and then I kind of allow myself every so often to read a novel, and it would be so lovely just to get lost in a novel. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if people could get lost in a novel and enjoy this? Because if you're writing, like, you know, 7 spiritual laws of awakening or something of that ilk, yes, you could write a great book, you could get a lot of people reading it, but it's going to be another chore for them to go through it, and you're competing with a lot of other excellent books on the market. But what if you could captures people's imagination in a story and also appeal to people who are maybe not quite ready to start reading those books? Maybe they're just dipping their toes in the water of something alternative. Maybe they've had their first ever reflexology session, or they're with an osteopath to realign their jaw, like Tracey-Jane, you know. So maybe something, they've just dipped into something alternative, and their psyche is just like a little crack in the psyche, and let's get in there with a story. Because when you're in a story, you don't feel like you're being taught something. So I didn't want it to be didactic. I didn't want it to be telling people what to do and instructive. I wanted it to be a fun thing. And also, Katie she's a bit of a klutz at times, you know, and she goes with trepidation on this journey. She's not really open to it. So she's like, oh, I don't know whether I could change my name, you know, oh, I can't do that. And she's got the critical voice of Richard, her husband, or sometimes she goes, oh, was it Richard or is it father? Because her father's also critical. So she's got this critical voice, and she's battling in herself between, this is an exciting new journey and I'm up for it and I believe in it, and what are people going to think about me because I'm living in West London with the book club mums, you know, and they're going to judge me. So there's this, and I think this is very real for people. So she kind of takes that journey and faces those demons for you so that you can see how she overcomes that and creates something different at the end of the book. So yeah, I really wanted to appeal to people who were just going to read a novel on holiday on the beach and maybe just get something. And I remember thinking, if everybody who reads it gets just one nugget of something from that book, my job will have been done. So in there, you know, there's the sessions like the soul contract. There's a real thing. You can go and have your soul contract read. There's Aura Soma. That's a real thing. You can go and do it. She meditates. That's a real thing. She does it. She's a Reiki master. These are all real things. But there's also a therapy sessions within it because she's a therapist. And those therapy sessions are also really authentic. Later on in the book, there's a character who's a love and sex addict, because that's what makes for exciting reading, is it? There's a love and sex addict, and he ends up going to the Priory, and he's working with his consultant, and we see the 12-step program playing out and how that works. So it's also not only an insight into a spiritual journey, but an insight into having therapy and some of the therapy techniques that she uses that maybe some people might be thinking, oh, you know, I've got this problem and I've not really done anything about it. Because one of the lines in the book is, it takes courage to go and see a therapist. And that just, I hope, reassures people if they do feel they want to go and have counselling or have therapy or start a journey, that they're not alone and it takes courage to do it. But when you see how Katie begins to shift and change, then hopefully that will inspire people. So if it's just one thing, I mean, you've read the first 3 chapters, and at the beginning there's a bit about God, where she's really basically rebranding God, because she doesn't really believe in God, it's the G word. But as we go through the book, she starts to understand that it's a divine mind, it's a divine emanation of love and light, and that works in a trinity, and it's not an old man on a cloud, you know, with his beard judging people. And there's a whole bit when judging people for parking in a space they shouldn't park in and things like this. So she makes it funny, but it helps us to understand, and maybe that's something that opens people's mind. Or maybe people are just struggling with the work-life balance and see that it's not just them and there's a way out. So yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people who read it, they see something of themselves in that book, different aspects, as you said.
Yeah, well, I certainly did. And from what you've just been saying now, you really create a desire to want to read the rest of it. Certainly, I can highly recommend, having read the first 3 chapters, I will definitely be reading the rest of it.
Thank you.
So after the book, what happens next for Bridget?
Well, there's 3 other books in the offing, and there's also a training. So at the moment, it's full steam ahead publicising the book. There will be a launch online on Zoom and Facebook Live, and please, anybody on the pod, if you'd like to come to that, please go to my website, sign up, or ask Deborah for my email address. Because you can come along, it's open, and I will be interviewed again and read a couple of different passages, and sign up for that. So go to my website, which is bridgetfinklaire.com, and just sign up for my newsletter, and you'll get all the information about what's happening with Bridget in the future. But basically, there's a sequel. So Red Dress is the first of a trilogy, and it kind of follows the whole creative structure, because in the first novel, Red Dress, she's discovering her current reality, really. She's seeing what her current reality is, and she has to break down that structure and understand that there's something more, that the whisper of her soul is calling her. So that's the first book in the trilogy. And the second book is where the whole thing actually implodes. Everything kind of... She's shifted, let's put it that way. All her structures, the old structures that were holding the dysfunction in place, have to fall away. And they all fall away, and she's in that mystery and they're not knowing, and it feels very like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Which of course happens when we go into this work. And at the end of that book, she's absolutely standing in her sovereignty, standing in her power, standing in her authority. knows exactly who she is and what she's about. She's single and she's happy and she's found herself. And so she's gone from this, the beginning of Red Dress is where she's got the markers of success, the big house, the handsome husband, the kids, the big car, the nice holidays, but feeling empty. And at the end of the second book, she's living in a flat with a small car, but she's absolutely happy, and she's got her friends and she knows who she is, and she's just like so whole and complete. And then the third book will be, because it is loosely following my life, so the third book will see her going to Cape Town and creating a training that raises women up to empower them to change the world. I think that's what it's going to be about. And there'll be a lot of stuff around empowering women in that book. And then I've also been asked by the publisher to actually write a non-fiction. So I've actually been asked to write a book called The Bone Circle. And The Bone Circle is kind of, Deborah and I have both done this training, and we've both evolved it in our own way. So the work that you're doing with Deborah is Deborah's offering in terms of this kind of work. Sorry, my phone's ringing and I'm just going to stick it on the floor so it doesn't disturb me. So that's Deborah's offering, and I've taken it in a slightly different direction, similar things, but different direction, because I'm adding in quite a lot of my therapy work and a lot of my other spiritual work, and that's called The Bone Circle. So they want me to write a book about the basis of that. And then I want to be training people, so I need to get that online, because it has been up until now something that I've done in person with people, so I want to get that up online. So there's a lot of work, and just getting to the point in my life where I'm thinking, oh, I could retire now, no, the world has got some other plan for me. So yeah, there's lots in the offing, so watch this space.
Do you think it might even go as far as being made into a film? I can see that happening. I can definitely see a film coming out of it as well. So
many people say that. I mean, even when I was writing the first draft, which wasn't even what we finally got, I had a friend, I've actually lost touch with her, called Felicity, and we used to drive together to a spiritual thing that we went, like a spiritual study group once every 2 weeks, and she hated driving and I loved driving, so I would drive and she'd sit in the car and we'd be talking, and I'd always be talking about what I was writing, and she'd go, this is going to be a film, I can see it's going to be a film. And most people that have read it or I've talked to them about it, they go, oh my God, this would make an amazing film. Now, interestingly, Deborah knows this, a while back, I think it was about, I don't know how long ago, 5 years ago, before I moved into this house, I did the equivalent of a Land of Dreams, but just for the book. It was actually premature to do that because the book was nowhere near written. But in that, I had it being made as a film, and I got a bridge from somebody, I can't remember who now because it was so long ago, to hold on to that vision because it was true. So in the back of my mind, at the moment, I'm focused on getting the book out there and getting a readership and I really focused on it going past that tipping point and going viral. I really want to get the book out into the world, and it's not about me being famous or me making money. Those are side things. It's really about getting that message out there, because the time that we're living in right now is a time when we have to awaken. We're living in a powerful gateway moment. We're living in a time when the feminine is rising, and there is, you just heard it, she's going to be a speaker for a new evolution in consciousness. That's in the book. That's actually my real soul contract. Okay, so we are part of a new evolution in consciousness, and together we rise, and love is the way, and it's time to be part of that now. So I want that book to go out there to awaken people, and and then once that's out there, and I start on all the other projects that I'm juggling, I actually need 3 of me and about 10 arms, to do it all. But once that's out there, I think then it will start to come out around probably the next, I know you call it Land of Dreams, I call it something different, but it doesn't matter. The next Land of Dreams will probably come up with something around the film. I'm sure it will. I'm sure Deborah will agree with me. The film is in the offing, but the book's got to get out there, because if the book doesn't go out there and go viral, nobody's going to pick it up to make the film. Interestingly, one of the people that interviewed me, and I said, oh, my daughter, they asked me about my children, and I said, oh, my daughter's a screenwriter. And they said, oh, well, she's going to write the film of your book. So I've had it in the back of my mind, and I don't know, because I don't know whether she'll want to do it. She's highly creative and she's got her own way of writing, but you never know. She's got lots of contacts in the film industry.
Keep it in the family.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've preempted a few of my questions there. Actually, I've answered them already. But I was thinking, do you find that you've now become Bridget? Well, part of you has become Bridget the author. Has people's perceptions of you changed?
I think it's the other way around. You have to set that intention to change. So I made a decision to let go of being, well, I was kind of Bridget Finklaire, Harley Street therapist, you know. Deborah knew me in those days. I had short hair and everything was bombed up, control freak, you know. So you wouldn't believe what I looked like. I had dark hair then as well. Deborah will remember, just about remember, probably in the dim and distant past. But yeah, so I had to let go of Bridget Finklaire, Harley Street therapist, and then I kind of came here, and that's and there was a whole transformation taking place, and then I kind of became Bridget Finklaire, therapist and coach, you know, and then and then at some point I let go of being a therapist and a coach and said, no, I'm a spiritual teacher, which I do. I actually teach not only the Bone Circle, but I teach another teaching called the Book of Knowledge, the Keys of Enoch, which is my absolute love and passion and hobby, and I do that for free, but I teach that, and it's quite extensive and it takes quite a lot of my time. So I am a spiritual teacher and I am an author, and I've written a book and it's being published and it's there, it's been birthed, it's got a life of its own, it's going out into the world. So I never thought I would be an author. I was never one of those people that thought, oh, I've got a book in me, I'm going to write a book one day. Never thought that at all. It was quite scary to think that I might have to write a book. But now I've done it. Actually, I really love writing. I really, really enjoy writing. I get lost in it completely. Lose yourself to find yourself. It's one of those. And yeah, I absolutely love writing when I have time. I do need time and space to write. So I haven't written anything in terms of novels for a while, although I have been writing articles for the launch of the book. So yeah, I'm now an author and spiritual teacher. So I've rebranded myself as that. And I think once you step into the power and authority of saying, this is what I am, then the world follows suit, rather than you dragging your feet and people going, but you're an author. Oh, well, I'm not really. No, you've got to kind of make that decision and be bold and take that inspired action. And that's kind of like holding an end result, isn't it? Or a vision. It's owning it.
It is. Yeah. Thank you so much for your your inspirational chatting to us here now. And sorry about that, my phone's just gone off.
You're back.
Sorry, I'm back. Yeah. So thanks very much for being so open and honest and inspirational, certainly to me as who's planning on writing a book about arthritis. It's just certainly given me some more insights to my own from my own personal perspective. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to anybody before we just wind up and open it up for questions from other people here?
Well, obviously the main thing I want to do is say, please, there it is, Red Dress by Bridget Finklaire. It's available on Amazon. It's actually available to pre-order right now from amazon.co.uk or any of the Amazons across the world. If you're anywhere else, you can get it on Kindle. You can get it at Waterstones. If you're in America, you can get it on from Barnes & Noble. It's wherever books are sold. JohnHuntPublishing.com is the publisher, and they will also sell the book. Please buy it, enjoy it, share it, tell your friends about it, share it on social media, and please do sign up for my mailing list. I'm not one of those people who spams you. I don't write very often on the mailing list because I simply don't have time. So I will only write when there's something really inspirational, like if I'm doing a book reading, or if I do manage to get to England later in the year and do a book signing, I'll let you know where I'm going to be signing. If you want to come and meet me and have a signed copy of the book, I will let you know, inspirational things. Yeah, so please sign up. And the website is, as I said, www.bridgetfinklaire, BridgetFinklaire.com. And also find me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the rest of it, Twitter. So please follow me and tell your friends if you feel inspired by it. And just thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll certainly be telling all my friends. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. Thank you.